It is time for a reset. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. My name is theTILAGO for those of you who are new around here, and I talk about all things faith, the faith journey, and living in and on purpose here on the channel. And so if you need a little bit more of that in your life, then you already know what to do. Hit the subscribe button like now. I'm really excited for today's episode because it is going to be the first part of a series that we're going to do throughout the month of July. If you've been listening to the last few episodes or watching them of my podcast here on the channel, then you know that I've been talking all about how I am resetting this month and, for the rest of the year, and how I've been goal setting and I've been reflecting and I've been doing all these things, trying to get myself ready to really live the rest of this year in a different way, in a little bit more of a focused way. And so if you are needing that, then this series is absolutely going to be for you. I don't really know how many parts it's going to be yet, but I already know that I've got 4 in mind, and we are going to call this just the mid-year reset. So you can walk through this thing with me. Today, we're going to talk all about what you need to do before you start to set new goals or you start to reset your goals. So I'm going to share the 3 things that I do before I start to set goals. And if you are ready to hear about it, keep on watching. Okay, getting straight to it. The first thing that I do whenever I'm about to set or reset my goals is I pray. If you did not know, I am a Christian. I believe fully that God has created each of us with a purpose, and He has created us with a life that He wants us to live with Him. And so I believe that because He knows the plan for our lives, He knows the end from the beginning, He has ways and thoughts that are higher than ours, then I'm going to go to the person who knows it all in order to try to get some insight about how I am supposed to be living my life. Because if I'm about to start planning, right, if I'm about to start, putting my steps in order, then I'm going to say, okay, who already knows the steps that I need to take? God. Okay. And so I'm going to go to Him. And so I make sure that I spend some time in prayer. I spend some time in His presence, and I make sure I go straight to the manufacturer, straight to the one who created me, in order to find out what kind of goals do I even need to set? Like, where does my mindset need to be? I just go to Him and ask for any insight, any wisdom. And I already believe, because the Bible tells us that He leads us and He guides us, right? And I also already believe that even as I set my plan, His plan is the one that's going to prevail. And so I want to get my plan as close to His plan as possible. I know sometimes that gets really hard because His ways and His thoughts are higher than ours. And sometimes all the time, it's just really hard to see things exactly how He sees them. But if you go to Him and you pray, I believe that He will give you answers that you need in order to take the steps that you need to. And so I have an episode all about praying for your purpose that I'll link up here and down in the description. But basically, when I'm about to pray about, setting goals and my next steps and things like that, I just go and I say, okay, God, here's what I'm thinking of, and here's what I've been doing. Can you help me to know what I'm supposed to do next? Can you give me the steps that I need to take next? And then I just sit and I wait. And sometimes that waiting looks like a few days. Sometimes I don't hear from Him, or I don't really get insight for a few days. And I have to be okay with that, right? Like, God's timing is not our timing. And so He's going to reveal things to me when He believes that I am ready to receive them, and same for you. And so I believe that you have to give yourself a little bit of time and not, sit and pray. And then if you don't hear anything, just do whatever you want. Like, you want to actually sit down, pray, but then give Him time to answer you, right? And that could be a little bit longer of a time than you are wanting it to be. But if you would just be patient and wait patiently on God, there's so many verses about that. When you wait patiently on Him, He really does give you the insight that you need in the time that you need it. He really does renew your strength. He really does do everything that He says He's going to do in the time that He says He's going to do it. And so you want to make sure that you are waiting patiently on Him for an answer, and not just like praying really quick and then going and doing your own thing. I could really dig into that, y'all, because I have learned it the hard way enough times. And I'm sure that I'm going to learn it the hard way again and again, because it's just not our nature to be patient. That patience is a fruit of the Spirit, right? It's a part of the fruit of the Spirit. And so we know in order to actually be patient, you have to tap into the Spirit. The Spirit has to produce it within you. And so anyway, I could go on a whole tangent about that, but the first thing that I do if I'm about to set goals is I make sure that I go to the one who knows it all. So I pray. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer. I definitely pray throughout this whole entire process, but I do make sure that I pray first and foremost when I'm starting this process. So that's why I put that first in this list and this process of things that I do. Okay, let's keep moving. The second thing that I do whenever I'm about to set goals or reset my goals is I reflect. I make sure that I take some time to reflect. I believe that this is a step that a lot of people kind of like skip over or miss or just push to the side or don't think is as important as it is. But you want to make sure that you reflect on your life. And so if I'm resetting for the rest of 2024, the rest of whatever year you're watching this, then I'm going to look back over the past 6 months and I'm going to say, okay, what has gone well? What have I enjoyed? What haven't I enjoyed? What hasn't gone well? Where have I been disciplined? I mean, I am asking myself all the questions. I'm asking myself, hey, how did we start? What things did we, what did we just see in ourselves and in our lives? And I'm just writing it. I'm writing it all down. Y'all know I'm a big journaler. If you didn't know, I'm big into journaling. And so I make sure that I take a lot of time with this to just like dig as deep as I can to write down everything that I can remember and that I can think of and that I can recall. But I'm going to make sure I reflect, because if you do not reflect, if you don't get honest about where you've been and where you are, then it's going to be really hard to step into the next season of your life or next phase of your life in an effective way. You might end up repeating cycles. You might end up repeating habits and actions and ending right back up where you are, which is not what we want to do. We want to always be moving forward, right? So I make sure I make it a point to spend some time reflecting, to spend some time looking back. It is so important for us to reflect, to look back, right? Now, we're not looking back with the intention to stay back. We're looking back to figure out how we can move forward, right? And so what can we take from this past season and how can we move forward? How did I grow? What did I learn? Y'all, I can list 25 million questions, I feel like, but you get the gist, right? All I'm trying to say is reflecting is so important. And so make sure that you take some time to do it. And if you guys want me to actually write down some questions or things that you need to be asking yourself when you are reflecting, let me know. I'll have you with that. And maybe that can be another episode in this series, but I'll make sure that I get that to you guys. And maybe it's just a comment that I'll drop down below. But again, make sure you let me know if you need that. Okay, we just got one more. Let's get it. The third thing that I do if I am about to set goals or reset my goals is I try to get as clear as I can on my purpose and the identity of a person who will live that purpose out. Now, let me break that down because that was a mouthful, right? What I mean by that is, number one, as I'm praying, right? And especially if I'm somebody who hasn't really dove into this world of purpose in ever, then I make sure that I'm asking God, like, hey, why did you create me? Why am I here? What's my purpose? Why, like, what is the thing that you've created me to do and to be and to become, and the problem that you've sent me here to the earth to fix or to, show up for? And God reveals that to you. And I say that you have to get as clear as you can on your purpose, because everything in your life needs to point back to your purpose. It needs to be conducive to you living your purpose out, because when you live your purpose out, you give God the most glory, which is what I believe that we are called to do. And you also are able to find the most fulfillment in your life. And so you want to figure out, like, why am I here? Like, I don't want to be out here living without aim, right? Without direction. I want to know, like, how can I live my life in the most effective and the most impactful way? And the way you do that is you live on purpose. So again, I ask God about that. He's the one who already knows. And so I say, why was I created? And I start to do a lot of digging into that question. And so I don't just stop on the surface level with that. And even though I am somebody who feels like I know my purpose right now, like, it evolves as I grow and as I evolve. And so I have to keep finding more of it. And that's the fun part about purpose for me, is you get to keep discovering more of it, because you keep discovering more of who you are as you grow and as you, develop and as you evolve. And so I dig into this a lot on the first episode of my podcast, the Pushing Purpose podcast. And so I'm going to keep referring back to that a lot, because there's a lot of this like foundational stuff that I've kind of already talked about before that I will link down below. Please go listen to it. If you have never dove into what your purpose is, how to live on purpose, how to find your purpose, all those things, that first season is for you. And you can go binge it and then you come back and let me know what you thought of it and what you got out of it. Now, it's not visual. The first season was all audio, but it's still so like, I know I'm biased, but I feel like it's still so good and so important, and can really help you, especially if you're trying to reset and, find your purpose and start to set some goals and some focus centered around your purpose. And so, okay, when I know my purpose, or I have a pretty, as clear as I can get picture of what my purpose is, then I ask myself, okay, what would the identity of the person who lives this person out be? How would this person look? How would this person move? What do they like? What do they dislike? What are their interests? What are their passions? Like, I'm asking all that stuff about the identity of the person, because I am trying to get my identity to line up with that identity as much as I can, because a person who lives out this purpose has to be that person, right? And so again, this is all about aim. This is all about direction. This is all about targets, and not so that you can get everything perfect, but so that you have a focus, you know where you're headed, right? And I feel like there's a lot of people in our generation and just in the world, period, who are living without this direction. They're just like kind of all over the place. And it's not the way that God called us to live. He wants us to be people who have focus. He wants us to be people who have aim and who are, looking towards something. First of all, looking towards Him, right? And so if we're looking towards Him, then everything in our life needs to point to Him. And if you live on purpose, that points to Him. And so, again, you just really want to try to get as clear as you can on the purpose and the identity of a person who lives out that purpose, because that is going to help frame and shape the goals that you are going to set, that we're going to talk about in the next episode. But you want to try to get as clear as you can. Now, here's the other piece of this. When you start painting this picture of the identity of the person who lives out this purpose, now's an opportunity for you to get honest with yourself. Because now you want to say, okay, if this is the identity of this person who lives out this purpose, and this is what I believe is my purpose, then how do I line up against that person? Like, where do we compare and contrast, right? Like, where are we aligned and where are we not aligned? And you want to ask yourself those same questions about, like, if you've asked yourself these questions of like, what is this person like? What do they do? Where do they hang out? What are their passions? All that stuff. Then you ask yourself the same question about yourself right now. And you do not want to sugarcoat things. You don't want to try to beat around the bush. You want to get honest, because the more honest you are, the easier it's going to be to set those goals that will actually help you to become the person that you have said this person will be. So I know I'm talking all like intertwined and all the things, but I hope I'm making sense, because these are aspects that are really, really important when you are setting goals. And especially if we're going to live out the rest of 2024 to the best of our ability and in the best possible way, we want to make sure that we are all aligned, right? So these 3 things that I've done, praying, reflecting, and getting pretty clear on our purpose and our identity, are so foundational and so important for us to dig into and to really get clear on, to spend some time on before we start setting our goals. So I really hope that you got something out of this episode. I hope this was helpful. I want you to go and take some time with these things. If you're somebody who also believes that you need a reset for the rest of this year, then make sure that you go and take these things and spend some time doing them. And then make sure you watch the next episode, because in the next episode, we're going to talk all about how you actually set those goals now that you've done these 3 things. And so when you're ready, come on back and watch this episode.